Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. Couple things happened today. One is the Incredibles 2 trailer was just dropped, and yeah, it's okay. I think it's a great looking family film. It does exactly look like a sequel to The Incredibles 1, except flipped. The wife goes out doing superhero stuff, and the man has to stay home. I kind of relate to that, taking care of kids at home, and also the math thing. The math thing. Oh my God, Common Core math. What is that? I can't relate to my own son's math. I'm like, I can figure it out just by 1+1, but you have to do it this way. It's like, it's just it's totally insane. So I can probably really relate to this cartoon, and it looks pretty funny. It looks enjoyable. I think my kids will definitely want to watch that. But at first I was kind of like, wait, what is going on? Like, the superheroes are the bad guys again? Like, what happened? So there must have been something in one mission where they went out, in which you clearly see the Mole Man at the beginning of the film, of that trailer. And I guess that's gonna make way into another, no more superheroes again, which is I don't really care for that. I think they've already gone through that in part one. I think part two should be more something else other than, hiding superheroes again. But let's see what happens with that. I'm sure they cannot. I'm sure they're gonna knock it out of the park. That's what I think. So Incredibles 2 is actually coming out this year. You see trailers like a year before, even teaser before, but surprisingly, Incredibles 2, you hear a little bit about it. Teaser drop, trailer drop, movie comes out same year. That's awesome. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe it's something new. Don't know. But yeah, so check that out if you haven't checked that out yet. Other news, Chris McKay said his first draft of Nightwing is done. Yeah, he's got it done, but he says he's going to take it slow. It's going to be a long process, and great, take your time. Don't let Warner Brothers beat you up and try to rush it out the door. But I think maybe they have some kind of timeline in place. Of course, we got your Aquaman, you got your Shazam, you got Wonder Woman 2, and then it looks like Nightwing is pretty much going along really well. I don't know if he's actually getting actors in place right now. There were some rumors and speculation. Some people have tweeted that they might be in the Nightwing movie, but that hasn't been confirmed at all. So we'll see what happens with that. Chris McKay, like I said, is very active on Twitter. I think if you ask him something, he might actually respond. He's kind of like Stephen D. Knight in a way, so it's kind of cool. So that's that with that. And also, of course, Black Panther comes out this weekend. Looks like it's going to be tracking $180 million opening weekend. That is a ton of money. That's a big, giant box office weekend. So get ready to see that number might be crushed. You know how some people's trackings are kind of off and stuff. So 180, it could go to 200 for all we know. So that's gonna be a big one this weekend. I will be going to see with my buddy, my son Grayson, as he actually really likes Black Panther from Civil War. It's one of the things that he remembers from that movie. So and the other one, well, not really, but I kind of trying to convince him it's Purple Ranger versus Gold Ranger. And he seems to be like, really? Oh, is it really? And he had to look at the trailer a couple times to that one scene they're fighting together. It's like, oh, Purple Ranger. I'm tricking him. I know I'm tricking him, but I'm trying to give my wife some freedom as I take 2 kids to watch movies, so she only has to take care of the baby. So that's that. That's this weekend. Black Panther. Hope it's good. And then we come to the biggest brunt of it. I know it's kind of more of an editorial, and if you want to call it that, but it's just me talking about Justice League again. Yes, if you don't care for that, bye bye. But Justice League, the director's cut, if it's ever going to come out, Snyder cut. So I went back in history just to look at it. This is not any confirmation or anything. We're just discussing about it. I'm not advocating what's going to happen. I have no idea. I'm just a fan. I just want to know. I'm just trying to figure out what has been done in the past. So when you look at Zack Snyder and it's Warner Brothers, we've got those characteristics. that has happened before, where there was a movie, and then there was a director's cut, then there was a ultimate cut, and that was Watchmen. And Watchmen was back in 2009, and not a lot of people were saying, well, Justice League is not didn't make enough money, right? So we've got what was Justice League was reported to be. It doesn't even have a report on the Box Office Mojo page, but still none available for production budget. But they're saying it was like $300 million, and it made worldwide $656 million, and they're saying, well, that's break even, whatever. So they're not going to put any more money into it. Okay, so but Watchmen 2009, and production budget at that time was $130 million. And I didn't know this at the time because I wasn't really into box office and all that stuff, but worldwide total was only 185. Yeah, it just barely, probably, I think it lost money. If they talking about this in terms of what Justice League was doing, how Justice League was like $300 million because of the reshoots, then you have the promotions and blah blah blah, the theater needs to make a cut, blah blah blah, so it's break even though the production budget and the actual box office was, box office doubled that, but because the production budget is just your production budget, doesn't come marketing and all that kind of stuff. So what does that mean for Watchmen? $130 million production budget. Worldwide is 185. If we do the same type of math we've done with Justice League, where 130, double that would be break even, so it's like 260. And this movie worldwide total is only 185, plus domestic was only 107, and foreign you don't get too much money out of it, from what I heard. So that lost a lot of money, right? That is like a box office failure for a really good movie, I believe, and one of my favorite movies of all time. Didn't know that at the time. I really enjoyed that movie. I watched it twice. But Watchmen, $185 million. $130 million production budget. So that is a box office failure in terms of what we view as box office successes and failures nowadays, right? So that is interesting. But yet that still was able to achieve more cuts and additions afterwards. Yes, the theatrical and director's cut came out at the same time. They didn't double dip that. They released both of them. They had a single disc theatrical cut, and then they had a double disc director's cut. So in a way, if people wanted the single cut, nowadays, we just get the one cut, right? We don't get two cuts or three cuts. But in this case, back in that day, they had a theatrical cut, and then they also have the director's cut, and they were released in the summer in July, and then in November he released the ultimate cut, which is just pretty much the director's cut, but they added the Tales of the Freight, what is that? The Black Freighter animation into it, to tie into it, but and more other stuff involved in it. But that's how it was back then. So Watchmen, even though it didn't make a lot of money, they actually made more cuts down along the line. But the thing is different is that Zack Snyder was still involved. He was still on board, right? He came in, he finished it from beginning to end, and he also had the chance to work on the cuts later on. So maybe they've already budgeted for that. That does not mean to say that Justice League never budgeted for that either, and Warner Brothers is not actually actively working on something like that. But I just want to see what has been done in the past and see how it relates to what Justice League could be. And there were a lot of others. They had 300. They had Sucker Punch. We can go on forever. They had unrated cuts of movies, which were really just director's cuts. But because the rating of that movie in theaters, they couldn't release the not so PG or whatever. So they call it the unrated cut for Blu-ray release because of the ratings, right? So they have that as well. They can do that as well. The theatrical unrated cut. So that also happens as well. So studio double dipping is it's a common thing. They do this all the time. A lot of these movies have that in effect. But I don't remember any of these movies too much that have a change in director, aside from Richard Donner and Richard Lester. But yet that took 20 years to get from one end to the next, right? From one director's cut to the next director's cut. Hopefully, I don't have to be 50 something in order to see that for Justice League. But well, yeah, I don't want to see it. But Blade Runner had a total of lots of cuts in itself. There's all these type of movies you could probably look into and see how it compares and contrasts. But the one things that they don't have is that a change in director in between the movie before the release of the theatrical cut. The only one movie I could think of is probably Gareth Edwards with Rogue One, but until now I don't think there is a Gareth Edwards director's cut version of that at all. And it could be because the story and how they relate is pretty much the same. How it began and how it ends is where they wanted to take it. It's just some things were shuffled in the middle that didn't quite work out. They were also wondering about Solo. Or is Solo, or we're ever gonna see the funnier comedic cut that those two other directors have done before Ron Howard stepped in? That probably is a no. My guess in any way, because they truly hated that cut and they were very actively saying that they didn't like that cut. So in this case, we're just rumor mongering about Warner Brothers and what they actually think about the cut, Unwatchable and stuff like that. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but that also ties into what may or may not happen in Justice League. It is another movie that's coming out, and this is a more recent story of what director's cut that could come out. So it was released on digital on December, and then it was released on Blu-ray in January. Now, when it released on digital in December, by around that time, the director did come out and say there is a director's cut. Probably not what Warner Brothers wanted him to say, as they continue want to double dip. So there is that as well. Another evidence of double dipping. We still haven't heard when the director's cut is. Said sometime in 2018. So that's 3 versions. That's the digital, theatrical. We got some deleted scenes in the January Blu-ray, aside but not included. And then there's going to be a director's cut which includes those scenes. So Justice League now. Let's get back in the present time. Justice League Digital came out. I'm not one of the lucky ones who got the Return of Superman scene on my digital copy. I understand maybe iTunes does, but I'm not the one. And there were bonus content in there, so it's not just a film. And I understand that if you get the Blu-ray edition, that will contain the deleted Return of Superman scene. So that's digital. Nowadays we're going to go digital and then physical copy. You know, back then they didn't have that. So digital, physical copy, and then there's a possibility of more. So my thoughts around that is that there are a couple things that I want to discuss about that. Is that first, what would Warner Brothers be thinking, right? What would they be thinking of when they, if and when, or if at all, they release the Justice League cut? Well, the Justice League Snyder cut, okay, if they release the Snyder cut, which we believe is much different in tone and some of it in style, but and they allude to a bigger story with like the nightmare sequence and things like that, Steppenwolf, Darkseid. If they release that cut, then does that mean they were wrong? They were wrong. It's a better cut, but not only that, does that fit their story that they're trying to drive the current DC extended universe into going? Is this the story that they want to keep playing out? Do they want to show Darkseid now as opposed to later on, or things like that? Do they want to continue that thing? So, and there at that time, before I even knew, I thought maybe Superman wasn't smiling enough, he wasn't hopeful enough, but now we know that's wrong. He was totally going into the type of Superman that they've wanted, so that I'm still scratching my head over that. Why would they do that? But that's one thing. That's the Snyder cut. If it's a complete rendition, like I said before, even though we don't like it and we won't want it, they could still alleviate that and call it the alternate cut. And there has been situations that it has been before, and not a full cut, but like an alternate ending. The only alternate cut I can think of is the Superman 2, the Donner cut. But alternate endings happens in a lot of these movies, and they've always included in the Blu-ray and DVD. Say for instance, I Am Legend. There was two endings in that, and so they released the alternate ending of that as well. So there is a possibility of them adding an alternate cut version out there, just to say that this is what you want the Snyder cut. That's not our current vision, current continuity to our current way how we want the DC extended universe, but here you go. It starts there and ends there, and that's it. And then I think I would still be happy with that. I'd be happy with that compromise in that case, where they have a button that says alternate cut, or a cut that movie comes out and says alternate cut. They call it alternate. They want to call it alternate, fine. We know it to be the true cut, but if they want to call it alternate, as long as they don't screw that one up. But that's one thing, because they want to keep their DC extended universe vision, right? And the other thing is that how embarrassing would that be if they were to release that and say that, yeah, we messed up big time. That's not the cut that we wanted, and yes, that's the cut that you see out there is exactly the one. The alternate cut is the right one, and we should have done that. I don't think they're gonna say that as they're going along the lines of, this is the new vision, this is the new DC extended universe, this is what we're gonna do. We're not gonna alleviate from that. So I see that as happening as well. Money, I don't know if that's an issue if they've already have most of it done. So that's an if. If they have most of it done, then that's not going to be the issue, right? Money, no, it's not going to be an issue. Were they just going to release a lot of it, like the Return of Superman, and in a way called the extended cut? And what I mean by the extended cut is that they complete the theatrical cut, but they extended scenes to that theatrical cut. That could happen as well, and that way they can retain their vision and yet give you more, and take more money out of our pockets, because we're going to be double, triple dipping at that rate. So those are also possibilities. And I don't know how much money it takes to make. When back then, when they were trying to do film the Black Freighter, they said it was going to cost them $20 million at that time to do that. Well, $20 million for that little amount, well, that big piece amount was quite a bit. And so you would expect maybe, it won't take that much to film or do, or revisualize some of the stuff in Justice League, even though a lot of it's heavy CGI. So that's that as well. But if they give it in pieces, like this is the storyboards, like in Toy Story, for instance, on the Toy Story Blu-ray and stuff, they had bonus content where they show storyboards of how Woody was a more evil Woody as opposed to the Woody we see now. They just released the storyboards with the sounds and everything as part of the bonus content, so they could also do that as well. So there's just so many different possibilities where you can go, or the worst case scenarios that they do nothing. They do absolutely nothing. They've released their Justice League physical copy, and that's it. That's the end of it. Let's move on to the next movie and not do a thing with that. Maybe years later they would, but that's the worst case scenario. So what are they going to do? I have no idea. But I'm just trying to throw out different situations where something like this has happened before, but not to this scale, not to have a director not completely be there and then we actually see something later. Like I said, the only one I truly remember currently is the Gareth Edwards with RogueOne, and that's Disney, and the Warner Brothers, Richard Donner, Richard Lester ordeal. So that's the only ones I could definitely remember. Let me know if you remember or know of any more situations that are very similar to this, and see it come through for the fans, how there was another cut or something. I know there are a lot of horror movies out there that do the same type of having an unrated cut or extended more hardcore cut or whatever you want to call it. So there's more versions of the same movie out there, those types of situations. Let me know if you run into anything that's very similar to this. I'm sure it's not going to be this scale if we've heard about it. But with that amount of money, how Watchmen didn't make that much money, or actually made almost no money at all, yet still was able to have multiple cuts with multiple editions, gives me a little bit hope that they would have something lining up for that. Maybe they've already planned. That's why they're not saying anything, because they want us to buy this digital copy. They want us to buy the physical copy to come out, and then maybe by the time the physical copy comes out, something will be said at that time, or none at all. Are they saving it for San Diego Comic-Con? I don't know. But I thought that was a worthy thing to talk about and discuss about the logical possibilities of it actually coming out. What are their plans, or have they already planned it, or you know, what will they do with that? And even Kevin Tsujihara, who says they made a mistake by being Marvel and being more DC, that almost meant to me like, I'm sorry, we're gonna release the real cut, but I guess that's not really the official word at all. So kind of surprised that no blogger or no media site like Deadline who are actually go right up to Kevin Tsujihara and the rest and ask him if there is a Snyder cut or is there ever more release to it. I'm kind of surprised. Or if they did, they're hush hush. I don't know. It's been really quiet. All right, guys. What do you guys think about all that I have said tonight? It's a long-winded video. I apologize for that, but I just wanted to get it out there. I'm actually kind of happy it was a slow news day, so I can talk about this. I've been meaning to talk about this, and I want to hear more about how this process works, the timeline between different editions when they're released and announced and released. Maybe we can get a little bit more backstory on what is coming, if at all, for Justice League in terms of other editions. Alright guys, well, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.